Thank you for listening to the Content Magazine podcast, Conversations with Silicon Valley's Creatives. I'm Daniel Garcia, your host and the cultivator of Content Magazine, published by SV Creates. This episode of the Content Magazine podcast is brought to you by Bonfire, a Silicon Valley digital agency building elevated websites for ambitious brands. Find out more about Bonfire at bonfire.com.
Hello?
Today we talk with Amanda Rawson. She's a program manager and the research director for Art Builds Community. Hey Amanda, this is Daniel. How are you doing?
Oh, hey Daniel. I'm doing good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. Yeah, it's good to hear your voice. And I do actually, even to start out, I do appreciate, we had like a little, I don't know if it was text messaging or Instagram or email discussion, just kind of like some of the feelings of the pandemic and re-entering and my kind of like leeriness to jump back into stuff. And we kind of had talked about that.
Yeah.
So that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I appreciate just your understanding. And I think even like, for me as someone who's definitely seen as an extrovert, and I am, but I've really been enjoying the
solitude,
the shutdown.
Yeah. I completely understand. I still have my fears of certain situations, and then others I feel pretty good. So, and that I noticed that's coming. That feeling changes as time moves on for me. But I too have developed this newfound love for not being in a room of people.
Yeah. It is kind of nice. I think we're all going to have to relearn and re-engage in different ways.
Yeah.
And so I'm actually, I am actually struggling. I'm like almost at the point of like not wanting to go to anything at all. So that I'm having some other kind of issues that I'm trying to work out. But when I do go to stuff, and I actually just met somebody the other day, just yesterday for coffee and one-on-one, I'm loving it, but I'm just not looking forward to group settings. Yeah, and it's not because I'm afraid of getting the virus or anything like that, or even giving it to somebody else. It's more of just, I just don't want to be in those situations. I don't know, I'm uncomfortable.
Isn't that interesting? So right, the work I do in the arts, we know each other through the arts. We know Brendan, my husband, is involved in the arts. So there's this constant event going, right, where it bleeds into your life, or it is just your life, right, which is fine because some of us are really passionate about that, and that makes sense, and we're very lucky and blessed to be able to work in what we're passionate about. But that involves so much energy of engagement, and I was actually getting really tired of going to things right before COVID, which is kind of interesting, the timing of everything that happened, because when COVID happened, and conversations of, oh, there might be a shutdown, it all felt like a conspiracy when I was hearing those things, and then it happened. And there was this beauty about everything kind of, it was scary, but there was also this beauty about everything kind of a standstill, that you can hear the birds, you can even hear the movement of the wind, things like that. And it sounds very fairy tale like, but it started to happen here, even in our busy area. And there for me, like a calmness came over, where I was able to kind of get more interested in, get introspective, right? Really looking at what does this mean for me, since I'm not doing those things I was doing all the time? How am I looking at myself? Like, it got very, very philosophical.
That's good. Well, then what was it? Did you have a conclusion? Did you come out of that with a certain epiphany of some sorts?
Yeah. So I don't say yes to everything now when it comes to going to events. I find a joy in staying at home and laying with my dog. I used to get anxious, like I had to be out and experiencing things. I am a runner. I found that love again, and truly found that love of running and being outside and challenging myself. And I also started thinking about my health in a different way.
Hmm.
No longer drink. I'm sober. Um,
Hmm.
that was
Good.
something that really became strong for me in the last year or two. A
Mm-hmm.
change, and it's been a positive change. And I'm a part of a run team, and I started personal
Yeah.
one-on-one training. So I have found a way to take care of myself in the way that I kind of always wanted to, but never thought I had room to do it because I was doing so
Hmm.
many other things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Good. I'm happy for you. That's
Thanks.
awesome. Yeah.
Thanks. Thanks. Appreciate it.
So then, yeah, and then so okay, so then we've been kind of tangentially talking just about being involved in the arts. Now, I am kind of curious of how you landed because you were at the San Jose Museum of Art for a while, and also the San Jose Museum of Quilts and Textile.
Hmm.
In kind of more, I guess it would be more of kind of like donor
Yeah.
sponsor relations and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Um, but you have a degree in art history
Hmm.
at Berkeley. So how did you get into the arts? What was you kind of like? How did you even get to Berkeley for an art history
Yeah.
degree, and how did that lead into San
So
Jose?
what's my story, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
what is your story, Amanda?
um, so yeah, I grew up in East San Jose. I um I
What high
I
school?
went to
I think you told
Independence High School.
Independence. Okay,
That
yeah.
was not my homeschool. My homeschool was Overfelt. So I went to
Okay.
Independence through a magnet program, and the program was a teaching academy. So I had this
Huh.
want to help people, right? To
Hmm.
teach, whatever that meant at the time for me. I've always been also interested in kind of the arts. Yeah, when I was
Hmm.
at Independence High School, I had an art history class my
Cool.
senior year of high school, and I was a part of the art club, but I was never an artist. At least I didn't see myself really in that way, in the way that somebody is
Mm-hmm.
really good at drawing or sculpture or so forth, right? And so I just knew that I wanted to be a part of the arts in some way. And it's funny you asked me this because I want to say like a week ago I was talking to Brendan about how I had this memory of being, it must have been like middle school age, and
Mm-hmm.
conversation at home with my parents, my grandparents. I think maybe my aunt was there, and it's like a vague memory of saying that I was interested in working in nonprofit, not really knowing what that
Oh
meant
wow.
at that time,
Wow.
but knowing
Yeah.
at that
Sure.
time what it meant to me was helping people, right? And I
Yeah.
remember the response being more of a, I don't remember who said it, but it was definitely family, saying, "Oh, so you're not going to make much money doing that?" Like there,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
so those they were trying to be helpful, realistic, that kind of stuff. And I remember thinking to myself like, well, I don't care, I want to do what makes me happy. And it was so it's when I
Yeah.
think,
Yeah.
I haven't thought about that for a long time, and now at 37, and I'm like reminiscing a little bit on those things and trying to understand why I am at where I how I got here. Those
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
memories pop up, and so that was my earliest memory of my word use of the word of nonprofit for my personal life.
Yeah.
Um and so high school, right? So high school, I was an athlete. I played softball. I traveled, gosh, so many different cities and states, playing travel ball during the summer and the fall, and then playing high
Cool.
school varsity during the spring, and on and on and on for 15 years. So I had this relationship with travel and the idea of experiencing other places and seeing
Mm-hmm.
what's going on. That was already developing. So when I initially went to San Jose State, right out of high school, I was a double major in psychology and art history. And I was very
Hmm.
unsure. What do I want? Like, I think I want this, and didn't really have enough
Yeah.
guidance at San Jose State at the time. It wasn't as impacted as it is now. This was like 2002. Um,
Yeah.
Very different experience than what students are getting now. Is
Were you still kind of thinking teaching? Do you think
At
that was
that
that kind of
point,
like the?
I was definitely interested in helping people, whatever that meant. So,
Hmm.
not really
Okay.
teaching. I was going back and forth in this triangle, I call it, of arts history, psychology, therapy kind of thing, and social work.
Hmm.
So,
Okay.
playing with
Yeah.
that, and I was trying to find guidance, and I didn't. So I ended up going to De Anza and leaving San Jose State, and I did finish in some GEs. And while I was at De Anza in 2004, I got introduced to Makla. And
Oh, okay.
yeah, and so I would go to Makla with a friend and experience that whole scene of going to an art gallery in the nighttime, and um,
Yeah.
just really loving it and thinking, wow, this is what I've been looking for. And in
Yeah.
high school, I used to go to Cafecito, which was where Iguanas is now. It was part of Iguanas in the early 2000s, where we would go, my friends and I, and listen on, I think it was Monday nights from like 6 to 8,
Open mic
open
type.
mic.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah. Yeah.
really
Yeah.
interested in poetry. The poetry slam was a big thing around that time, and um, all the arts. Just found myself in love with all of that. And
Yeah.
then I just started working, and I never finished school, my bachelor's. I dated, partied, all that stuff, and went to music in the
Yeah.
park all the time. Love
Yeah.
music.
Yeah. Yeah.
Went to the jazz fest, what I called it back then. Now I know better. It's the summer fest, and the correct term, right? And so,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
I I started volunteering at Makla around 2010, and I at the
Okay.
same time I left my retail work. Um, in the mall, I was managing the Levi's boutique store, and I started working in Japantown at Roy Station, and saw my
Cool.
way. Really, kind of found my way to get to be a part of the community, and I knew Makla was like that good entry, right? Because I knew people
Yeah.
already associated with it, and so I started volunteering there. And around the same time, I had decided I'm going to go back to school, and Berkeley was my dream school. Berkeley
Hmm.
was
That's
my.
cool.
I never got it. I never thought applied, and that year 26, 27, I was thinking, I now's the time. I need to do this. So I applied
Yeah.
to UC Berkeley and UC Santa Cruz as an art history major, and shared my experience. I coached softball at Latino College Preparatory Academy (LCPA)
Oh,
for a
cool.
little bit, with the girls there, and the volunteer work I did with Makla, and just my experiences in my 20s of having to manage myself, right? Live
Hmm.
alone,
Yeah. Totally.
work, all
Yeah.
that, and they
The
accept. Yeah,
adulthood stuff.
exactly, and they
Yeah.
accepted me, and
Cool.
got in, and art history was still a thing. I realized that was still my love, and I still wanted
Huh.
to figure out
Interesting.
how to do work in that field, and so I did art history at Berkeley, and
That's cool.
my first semester there is when I started dating my husband.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's cool.
so
So then you're doing art history, and then how did that lead into being at the San Jose Museum of Art, and then into
yeah,
quilts
so
or in
it
textiles?
was Quilts, and then at San Jose Museum of Art. But yeah,
Oh.
so how did that lead? I was at Berkeley from 2012 to late 2013. So it was a spring to, it was 2 years. So I started in spring of 2012 and finished in winter 2013. It was kind of weird the way they accepted me. And because I was a transfer student, it was a 2 year program. So I knew that I was going to have to find
Hmm.
work right away, or do something right away. Right.
Yeah.
And Brendan had encouraged me to think about, this is where partnership is amazing, right? To
Hmm.
think about uh, reaching out to the off the beaten track kind of locations, right? The places that people don't usually, like, don't immediately go to, right? They would immediately go
Yeah.
to the San Jose Museum of Art, right? That is
Right.
like, if you're not into the arts, you just know there's probably a museum of art there in some city. But
Yeah.
so he had encouraged that thought, and said you should, think about volunteering first, or asking for an internship first before applying for the work. And I had already was doing part-time work in retail, so I was able to do that and still make money.
Hmm.
So I
Yeah.
actually volunteered at the Rosicrucian Library,
Oh.
and
Okay.
at the same time, did an internship at the San Jose Museum of Quilts and Textiles in my first semester outside of college.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so it
Yeah.
was more of it was the idea of trying to do something different that wouldn't that isn't typical, right? That somebody would typically go after right after college. I was going
Mm-hmm.
after the obscure Egyptian museum that everybody's always curious about, right?
Yeah. 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 And quilts.
And then
Yeah.
quilts, of which
Yeah.
I knew nothing about, right? And so
Right. Right.
I was focusing on Elizabethan art and turn of the century British art. I was just so
Right.
interested in
Yeah.
European art. And I fell in love with it. You know, I met
Yeah.
Nancy Bavor, who is now retiring from the Quilts and Textile Museum. She was in charge of the collections at that
Yeah.
time, and we just hit it off. And she said, "You know, I want to turn this into an internship." And it was an internship for about 4 months. And herself, as well as the director at the time, Joan Phillips, had said, "We need to hire you. You are
Cool.
you are somebody who clearly knows the community. You're
Mm-hmm.
not afraid to talk and speak up and challenge yourself, and you have the art history background, the idea of research and the understanding
Yeah.
of a collection and its importance and so forth." So that's how that started, and that just kind
That's
of
cool.
went from one thing to the next there. I mean, I started in the collection, then did community engagement, then was the deputy director, and then got back down to program and community development. So that involved sponsorship and membership. And
Yeah.
then I thought, I'm too big of a fish in this pond. And so I was looking for other work. Um, and I went to San Jose Museum of Art. Yeah.
Yeah.
The major
That's
gifts.
cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It was really
What's
fun.
cool is just hearing that, like, just the, the idea of like, like volunteering and helping out,
Yeah.
and then how that opens up other doors. Um,
Absolutely.
and the thing is that you are, I mean, like I feel like you are very involved in the community, because I know that you were, or you are, a part of Local Color,
Yeah. That
right?
just finished. Yeah. For me.
Right. And then genArts, you've been involved in
Yeah. Yeah.
genArts.
That just finished.
And
Yeah.
then, of course, the San Jose Arts Advocacy. You're a part of the
Yes.
advocates. You're a part of that,
Hmm.
kind of like one of the founding
Yes.
group of people with that. And I think, are you on the board with the Triton Museum
I
too?
was on the board
You
of
are?
the
Yeah,
Trenton Museum of Art. Yeah. That was.
that's a lot of community engagement.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my goodness, I don't know how I do it as somebody who doesn't drive. But I did do it. I made it happen, and I'm persistent when I want something. I sat on the board of Local Color for 4 years, and
Hmm.
that recently came to an end in the new calendar year. So
Hmm.
2017 to 2021. Um, yeah, and I was the secretary, and that was that's a fairly young organization.
Yeah,
And because it was the board was a fairly green board,
yeah,
whether it was their community understanding or just board work in general. and
sure.
um and so I really brought what I've learned as somebody who's worked in nonprofits or has been a part of the community or has had to navigate myself, as not only an arts administrator, but also the wife of an art administrator, right? And what is that? What is
Yeah,
the knowledge I have from gaining from those conversations, and bring
yeah.
that to the table? And working with Aaron Salazar there was
Hmm.
amazing and eye opening, and learned a lot, and also felt like I gave. I
Yeah,
didn't just
yeah,
take from them, but that I gave a lot to the point where now they were asking if I would stay on as like an advisory member.
yeah. Cool.
So that's
Yeah.
been fantastic. Yeah. And then
What
genArts,
would you
same
say?
time period.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
Yeah.
What would you say then, just on that? I mean, being, if there's anybody out there listening, anybody at all, but if there's anybody particularly like with, like being a part of a board for an arts organization, even like a young startup kind of organization like Local Color, or,
Hmm.
um, what's some advice or some ideas or things that you learned, and, what's some kind of, you can shed some light on that
Yeah.
experience?
Don't be afraid to ask the hard questions, even if the person
Hmm.
you view them as your friend, because sometimes for some people confrontation is tough, right? And I respect and admire Erin, but there was
Mm-hmm.
also moments where I had to challenge her on some of the decisions, either she was making or other board members had suggested. and
Mm-hmm.
and because of me of those my responses, I often received post meetings, "Thank you for asking that," or "I'm glad you brought
Okay.
that up." And
Yeah.
being a young, whether in age or experience, board member, um,
Mm-hmm.
if there is this fear of asking that question in a public environment, then don't hesitate to reach out to your board president or the director and talk
Mm.
to them about it one on one or as a group of three, um, because you're there for a reason. You're volunteering your
Yeah.
time, right? You're not getting paid for it, and they want you there, else they wouldn't have
Yeah.
reached out
Totally.
to you to be on the board. Um and so provide that input and have those important conversations, whether it's around funding opportunities or programs or addressing
Yeah.
accessibility and so forth. So yeah, that would say be my biggest one.
Yeah. That's cool. That's good. I mean, yeah, that's the thing is like, right, the strength of an organization or something like that is having those diverse opinions, ideas. You can still do it, in respectful, honoring ways. But yeah, if you don't speak up,
Hmm.
you might be actually hindering the growth of the organization. Yeah.
Right.
Or do you find yourself to be a type of person that's not afraid to speak up and yell emperor's new clothes or anything like that? Is that a general theme in your life, would you say?
Oh my gosh. Since birth. I mean, I could be quiet. And I have my moments where I will be very quiet, but yeah, I mean, I've been doing public speaking since middle school. I
Oh,
remember
wow.
being asked to speak. I was in AVID, which was, a college bound program for students whose parents didn't go to college. And at the time, my parents hadn't gone to college. They have since then. They went as older students, but at the time when I was in middle school, they didn't. So I was introduced to speaking in public rather quickly, and I do get nervous sometimes.
Huh.
Or I and because and with the battles I've had with my sport, I played
Hmm.
softball in the
Mm-hmm.
early '90s, and it was predominantly white families, and
Hmm.
we're Mexican, and not
Mm-hmm.
very. I didn't grow up. Me, like our income was not that great, and my grandparents probably paid for most of my sport, and so
Yeah.
I always there was moments where I had to speak up for myself, and
Yeah.
it was uncomfortable at times with coaches where I had to say, ask the hard questions. Well, why am I not, or how come, or what am I doing wrong? You need to tell me instead of just pulling me out, or things like that. And so I think my sport also
Hmm.
really helped me to be verbal, and sometimes I can be a little too much. I mean, Brendan is the exact
Sure.
opposite of me. Like,
You guys definitely are the yin and yang.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've made friends by saying hi on an airplane, and they're still friends with
Right.
me. Like,
Yeah, it's cool.
yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. So then would you say like and this is the thing too, I think like even in, a community and serving and stuff like that, you kind of have to have a confidence or either like a burning that would trust your intuition. Like it sounds like stuff that you've kind of said with, maybe what you kind of the antidote that you kind of gave with local color, like that you trust your intuition. And I was even thinking, is that even part your Instagram handle name? Does it it's supposed to be off of intuition or what? Like what the heck does a
Oh,
I
and
don't even know how to
the
pronounce.
initium novum.
Yeah,
So,
what is that? I don't
so
even know what that is.
It's
And
Latin. My Instagram handle
yeah,
is initium. I always say it wrong. The story behind that is me going back to school. So
oh,
when I went back to school, my dad was going back to school at the same time,
oh,
and
cool.
my dad is 21 years older than me. So my
Hmm.
parents were fairly young, not super young, but they were definitely weren't in their late 20s. They were still pretty young when they had me, and I'm the firstborn.
Hmm.
And so my dad was studying Latin, and he's an
Ah,
English major. He teaches English. That's his thing. He's great at it. Um,
cool.
and he was like talking about he wanted to get a tattoo, and
Hmm.
and he wanted it to be initium novum. And we were both. I grew up very close to that. My dad, he was my coach. We have
Hmm.
our had our arguments and our happy times and so forth.
Sure.
Um, and so he got the tattoo, and I got it with him. So we both
Hmm.
went to back to school at the same time. We got the same tattoo, and it was a new beginning for both of us. And that's what initiatum novum literally means, is new
New,
beginning.
new beginning. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I thought maybe it had something to do with intuition or something like that, and so I was wrong. Oh well,
you
learning
were
theory. But that's
you
cool.
were
New
close.
beginning. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We'll
Yeah,
go
yeah,
with
yeah,
that. You were kind of close. I
yeah.
thought you were talking
I,
about, am I a generalist if I love a bit of everything? Because really, I mean, that's also me. So that's my
oh yeah.
tagline on my Instagram account.
Oh yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's cool. That's cool. Yeah, my Latin. I'm not up on my
That's all right.
Latin.
Most
It's cool.
people
New
aren't.
beginning.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's really cool.
Thank you.
Okay, so yeah, so talk about new beginnings. So then you were at the museums, and then now you're a part of with Barbara Goldstein, who used to be like the public arts commissioner for the city of San Jose, who's
The,
branched out to her own
yeah.
consultancy, and so it's arts
Art builds
builds
community.
art builds community,
Yeah.
which obviously in the name there's a mission
Yes.
right in that. How did you get connected with that, and how do you see this? Um, being kind of like the next step in your career or life or whatever,
Yeah. That's a
in your
good
journey.
question. So Barbara Goldstein, yeah, she's amazing. She she was the public art director for the city of San Jose. That's
Yeah,
right.
that's right.
So she did that, and before working there, she worked as the public art director for the city of Seattle, and then prior to that, she was the public art worked in the public art program and helped really develop it for Los Angeles
Yeah.
during a time where things were really tough. She was part of the response to the Rodney King riots. And so she's
Mm,
really been doing this work in an impactful way for decades.
yeah.
But didn't go to school for public art planning. So I don't think anybody, now you can more so, but even when I was in right out of high school, that wasn't something that was present as an available education to move forward on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I met Barbara as a customer at Roy Station in Japantown. That was the benefits of working at Roy's about 6 days a week and
Right.
full time, and not doing really anything else, and just working coffee and hanging out afterwards. And so Barbara was a regular, and
Yeah.
I always there was always something about her that was always interesting to me. I didn't know her work. I just remember she'd come in. There was always those few that would just catch my attention, and I just always was curious, like, what does that person do, or I wonder what their
Mm-hmm.
life is outside of being a customer here. Um, and so I would try to start conversation with her, like small conversations, and just kind of show her I was interested in her and
Mm-hmm.
and learning about her. And so because of that, we would see each other at art openings, at
Yeah.
events, and and when she found out that I was no longer at the San Jose Museum of Art in 2019, she had found out, I think it was 2019. Um, she had asked me to lunch, and at this point, she
Hmm.
already had Barbara Goldstein and Associates, which was her own consulting firm for herself, just her own thing she was doing. And
Yeah.
and so she asked me for lunch, and she said, I want you to work for me. Will you come and work for me? And
That's awesome.
huge honor. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. I just was in shock, and I so happy to be asked that. And I shared that I've I'm curious about the public art world. I want to learn about it. My
Mm-hmm.
eagerness, I think, really stood out when having
Hmm.
different conversations with her. My will and
Mm-hmm.
my want to be a part of that
Mm-hmm.
work was clearly noticeable because she asked
Yeah.
me to lunch and offered this position. Um, and and so she brought me on right away. And what has been really that first year of working with Barbara, what I admired most about her was her ability to talk to me as an equal, despite me not having the amount of experience, or even half
Hmm.
of the amount of experience that she
Yeah.
had
Yeah.
at the time. And I think that's just an amazing power to have, because many of us, just and this is from just life experience, many of us tend to have those internal biases that we just don't think about, and they just kind of happen, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of that
Right.
has to go deals around age, ageism, um,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
I'm guilty of it. I've definitely done it, and she just did not. That was not present, and because it was not present, I thought, oh my goodness, I can work with this woman for a, a long time.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so um my first
That's
projects
awesome.
with her were with the BART Public Art Master Plan and finishing that up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. So that's the thing. So Art Builds Community, what you guys are doing is helping cities, organizations, I guess, mainly cities, like,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because I think, yeah, think in terms of how the art is helping the whole ecosystem, ecology, and not ecology, yeah, economic
Mhm.
system and the placemaking and all that kind of stuff, right? That's kind of what
Yeah,
you're
sorry, I was got so
involved in.
stuck on the way we were working together as a team.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's
So
cool. No, that's cool.
I'm also blessed to have two other amazing women working with me on this now, which is Quinn Win and
Mm-hmm.
Stephanie
Yeah, cool.
Barajas, who's new
Yeah.
to our she's Stephanie's new to our team. But yeah, so what we do primarily, we are a consulting firm. So we are a small business. I think a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
confuse us of being a nonprofit because we focus on the arts, and that tends to be what
Mm.
arts are, or nonprofits.
Yeah.
And a lot of our clients are cities, and usually it's like the Office of Economic Development Department, or Office of Parks and Rec, or Community Services. Those kind of departments in the cities tend to be our clients.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
what we've been doing the last few years, a lot of, is building public art plans, cultural plans. Um,
Mm.
uh, we're finishing one up right now in the city of Livermore. We're building their cultural vision plan, and what that
Okay.
includes is providing recommendations of what we have learned the city should move forward with in the next, whatever the length of time that they would like. They provide us at the very beginning of developing the
Mm-hmm.
scope of work. So like 5 to 10 years, 2 to 5 years, those recommendations would be implemented. And the recommendations are based off of a number of things, and that would include community engagement, really getting that
Mm.
community buy-in, and that's the work that we do. We
Mm-hmm.
figure out ways um, to get the community engaged by going to where they are, the events that are already happening, being introduced to those
Mm.
community stakeholders, right? Whether it's a longtime volunteer in like a chamber, or it's a Filipino community group, or it's the folklorico dancers, whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is that that city really has connections. A connection with, those are the groups that we are having those focus group conversations, and
Yeah.
learning what is it that you see that you want, that you don't think should be here, and what you would
Mm-hmm.
like to, and what you see in other places that you like. And then having
So,
conversations with city staff, and then so we build the plans. That's a lot of what we do, right?
yeah.
And then we also do public art projects. So, facilitating a public art project, a permanent public art project, and the whole process. So, we're doing one right now with Santa Clara County at the Vietnamese American Services Center in, McLaughlin area,
Mm-hmm.
and we brought a list of artists to apply, and sent the invite out, and just did the whole interview process, and now it's getting closer and closer to being finally designed and put onto the building. So they're
Okay.
long processes. That's
Yeah,
for
sure.
sure. Yeah. So it's very
Working
different.
with municipalities. Yeah.
Yeah, very different
Yeah.
than murals or paintings, because a lot of what the public art projects we've been working on are three-dimensional permanent work.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, like so for like Livermore, can you use? I don't know if this is like NDA or not supposed to be, but like what would be something that you have determined and suggested? Like what is like, oh, put a bronze statue here, or what? Like
Right. No,
what's
so the
some of
kind
the?
of things that we suggest, and like I said, it comes out of the conversations we have with the community, right? And we, gosh, we did so much community engagement there, where Quinn and I were in Livermore every weekend for two
Hmm.
months.
Yeah.
at some of whatever event they were having, and we were asking the same questions. And so some of the recommendations include developing something similar to the Molly program that we have here, for
Okay.
their arts leaders of color, right? They don't have
Mm-hmm.
we have a lot of great things here in City of San Jose or Santa Clara County that others don't
Yeah.
have. And
Yeah.
I mean, the only way you can learn about that is really by experiencing it, right? And so what we experience is hearing these residents, these arts leaders of color saying we don't feel seen,
Yeah.
and we want to, and we want to be
Hmm.
involved. So, and the city said, yes, we want to involve you and we want to see you. And so
That's cool.
that's one of the recommendations, is to develop something similar. Another recommendation is they have a lot of creative entrepreneurs there. And so we are looking at using structures like a parking garage, right? San Jose is another example of the moment at the San Pedro
Mm-hmm.
parking garage. What does that
Yeah.
mean? How does that look? How does how would that work for a city like Livermore? And then something a little bit more policy driven that we will recommend in a lot of projects, because this is usually why there is a request for proposals for doing a public art plan go out, is developing a higher percent for public art,
Yeah.
right? And
Definitely.
so
Yeah.
the city of Livermore has a very small percent for public art from the city. Like the city, um, people get confused on this one sometimes, and it can be confusing. So there is a public percent for public art, and that means
Yeah.
the city's projects like a fire station, library, so forth. One like a certain percent of the budget will go into the public art program, right? And
Yeah.
each city is different in the way that money is spent. Now, also each city is different on the percentage that they pick out. Some cities have
Yeah.
0.5%, some have 1%, some have 0.3%, weird things like that. So they want to bring theirs
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
So that was one of our recommendations: is bring up your percent to 1%, and these are the benchmark cities that are similar to you in size and
Hmm.
capabilities that have a 1%, and this is what they're doing with it. So
Yeah. It's cool.
it's a lot of work, but it's very interesting work. um
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
like I said, I did not know I would be doing this. um
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but art history really, art when you do an art when you get more in depth in art history classes, not just that those beginning classes, which I admit can be boring, but when you get more specific in an area of an art history class, you start learning more about how a society is working, and
Hmm.
how why an artist has created work in response to what's happening in that society, right?
Yeah.
That's really what's
That's cool.
coming out of art history. It's an
Yeah.
artistic
Okay.
way to express an historical moment.
Yeah. Movements and so.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. That's cool.
So that
That's
helps
awesome.
in this work, is understanding the way people are engaging in their society and how they want to represent it.
Yeah. That's cool. That's cool. Yeah, I'm just when you first were talking about it, I was thinking in terms of like, so okay, yeah, like I said, it's like, okay, so Livermore, you said, oh, we're going to put up a statue, but it's interesting, even here the city that Livermore's willing to do it, of like think in terms of like, no, you really you develop the people, you develop those
Right.
relationships and the capacities, and then that begins also to change, kind of like not just the artistic expression, because that, what I mean, that makes people think too small, but the placemaking and the
Yes.
welfare of the community. Yeah, that's pretty
Yes.
cool.
Yes.
Now it seems like you guys have been involved, and I don't know if this is just you personally, but I think it is with Art Builds community. Uh, is with the Womanhood project with the county of Santa Clara.
Yes.
Is that you guys as an organization, or is that just you personally? And I think you even did you do a seminar last night or
Oh, yeah.
attend something
Yeah,
as
you
well?
saw
And
that. Yes,
yeah,
so Womanhood is a project out of the Office of Women's Policy in Santa Clara County. And
Mm-hmm.
our firm applied to do this project. We had to do an interview process to be the consultants that would
Mm.
make this come to life. This was in late 2019. We were awarded in early 2020 when the world kind of came
Mm-hmm.
to a standstill. So, uh, so things have definitely changed for this project in a very in a lot of ways, and um, both on the back end and the way it would have been presented to community. But we have um, our team of four has really found a way to keep it alive in that second year. You know, that first year was all about scope of work. How are we going to do this? How are we going to market this? Um,
Yeah.
how do we change our programming to engage with community members in the 15 city county, right?
Yeah.
It's huge, uh,
Yeah.
and so we started this program called Artists Honoring Women. And
Hmm.
through StreamYard, we have female artists that we've reached out to that have done interesting and significant work that that is about women. The work
Hmm.
actually speaks on specific women. So Judy Baca was one of the people that I got a chance to interview, one of the artists, and she did the Arch of Dignity that's at San Jose State, and Dolores Huerta is on that
Yeah.
was on that arch, right? And that's part of why we asked her to speak. Of course, you know, we know Cesar Chavez is on that arch,
Yeah.
um, and Robert Kennedy's on that arch, and Gandhi. But we wanted her to speak more about why she placed um, Dolores Huerta where she did, and the iconography
Mm-hmm.
around all of that. So that's kind of what we were doing up until the point where we can actually come into the same place as other people,
Yeah.
and so we did a series of those with a lot of amazing artists and throughout California, and one out of New York. And we're going to go back to that and do it again, because we realized that having that available online is important for anybody who can't attend something in person or watch it when it's happening live. So that is available at the
Mm-hmm.
womanhoodproject.org. But um, the current work that we just recently kind of uh, the event I invited you to, the kickoff event, was really the kickoff of the project in person finally. And we
Hmm.
started in the city of San Jose first, because we know it so well. We're all city of San Jose residents. We receive an Abierto grant
Mm-hmm.
because we didn't have to be a nonprofit to apply for that. So we applied for that and received an amount that supported paying 13 different female artists that are from Santa Clara County to create
Yeah.
temporary public artwork that will celebrate a woman of their choice of a list that we've curated. And the
Cool.
women are primarily from Santa Clara County, mostly San Jose, but there's some that aren't San Jose, and
Mm-hmm.
they're diverse. They're diverse in regards to the fields that they represent, and their ethnicity, as well as their age and generation.
Hmm.
And I think I feel the most proud of the fact that we were able to pay all the artists a livable wage, as well as
Yeah.
and provide them a space that is prominent. You know, we have
Mm-hmm.
banners in Paseo de San Antonio. We have some banners on Post Street. We have window artwork at the old Muji location right there on First Street. We
Mm-hmm.
have window work in the Hammer Theater, and then we have that faces Circle A skate shop, and we have
Yeah.
window work at the second and third floor windows at the old Hank Coca furniture store. We were
Oh.
able to get
Okay.
in
Yeah.
there. And so they all tell stories about women. We have signage of it. We have a map that you can find online at our Instagram account. We also have paper maps. I mean, the kickoff was fantastic. It brought all these amazing women together, and
Mm-hmm.
brought generations of people together. And it was just a nice way to kind of finally be able to come back semi comfortably in the same space and celebrate each other on something that we've been working on for since 2020.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool. What would you say, like, so not just, well, let's focus on that because it is like it was just International Women's Day,
Hmm.
and I think this no, this
It was on the
is
8th.
March
Yeah,
is
so this is
March
March is Women's
Women's
History
Month.
Month.
Yeah,
And then the
yeah,
8th
yeah.
was International Women's Day, which is why I spoke for Notre Dame High School last night
Yeah,
that
that's
you were
cool.
asked, you
That's cool.
mentioned, yeah, one of their
Yeah,
webinars.
that's cool. So then let's focus just specifically on then the Womanhood Project. What have you learned by being involved in this? What was something that you kind of like your, would you say that you has changed either your opinion, perspective, attitude, or approach to life even,
Yeah,
with by
yeah.
being involved in that?
I it's funny you asked that because sometimes I affirmations never used to be my thing.
Hmm. Hmm.
I wasn't big
Yeah.
on, one day at a time, or just look at yourself in the mirror and say you're beautiful, those kind of things. I was
Yeah.
always kind of like, nah, whatever. Um, and since COVID and since doing this project, I've come to uh, be more comfortable in that kind of way of looking of being a woman. Um,
Hmm.
and I just it, it's such a hard it's hard to describe, because it's definitely a feeling, an internal feeling that I have of this kind
Hmm.
of sense of acceptance, and
Okay.
still also being okay with not truly understanding who you are. And
Hmm.
when I say that, I start thinking about the stories I've learned about some of these women, of the research I've been able to do, and in reading their stories and seeing how crap, like, they
Hmm.
they had it really freaking hard in ways that I
Yeah.
cannot imagine,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And that they did these accomplishments. They accomplished these things, like becoming the first African American judge in the Santa Clara County, or
Hmm.
things like that, or standing up to social justice issues at the middle school, in a very powerful way. Kind of doing these things
Hmm.
that I would assume make somebody feel incredibly happy and good. But we can't. I think my reality check is that just because they did that doesn't mean they didn't have a hard time still. Like, just because they were
Yeah.
probably
Hmm.
celebrated by their peers of accomplishing something in a moment, we're all still human. And
Hmm.
yeah, it's all this like really weird
No.
deep
Yeah. Yeah.
stuff that has been going on in my head. It could be because I'm getting closer to 40, but it's like these deep kind of thoughts, and with questions that can't be answered, that I just start thinking about, since doing this project, and really trying to
Yeah.
understand my place as a woman, and what does that mean. And I'm not a mother, and I don't, that is not something I'll be doing. And what does that mean? Am I missing out? Those kind of questions
Oh
really
yeah.
start
Yeah.
to move forward when you start reading about these women who've done really significant uh, things in their community, or a state, or nationwide, or internationally.
Yeah. 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 That's interesting. I mean, yeah, definitely to think that if someone's a hero or has made an impact, it doesn't mean that necessarily they had it all together,
Right.
or they even had like personal confidence or what, right? It was more
Yeah.
of like driven by a mission or a call or a purpose,
Right.
or yeah,
Yeah.
something
Or
like
just to
that.
be able to stay
Yeah.
alive. Right. Yeah.
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 Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are
Yeah.
things I think about. Yeah, it's kind of dark
Yeah.
stuff, but it is also just the human. I think it's the human condition, and for me at least. So that's kind of. I hope that answers your
Yeah.
question.
Yeah, no, that's good. I mean, yeah, it's just, yeah, actually, you brought up a really good thing to think about that, just to stay alive, right? Like a lot of things that are seen as of heroic deeds or acts are really just out of there was no other option. There
Right.
was, right?
Right.
Yeah, yeah,
Exactly.
hmm,
Yeah. I
yeah.
mean, there was a, what is her name? Sarah. Not rich, not I see. I'm blanking on her name right now, but she was one of the first lawyers, female lawyers here.
Hmm.
And when she was trying to become a lawyer, she was a single mom of, I want to say, four
Wow.
kids.
Oh, wow.
And this
Yeah.
was like at a time where women were not even,
Yeah.
this is like turn of the century and not 21st century, like 20th century. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
and this
yeah,
was in San Jose. Like, she was this woman in San Jose, and I can't imagine 4 kids
yeah,
by herself at a time where women had to wear dresses, right? Not allowed to
yeah,
wear pants.
yeah,
It was more about, what they were supposed to be doing, and they had to be happy with the fact that they're supposed to be doing things, and if they weren't
right.
comfortable in that, then they were pitied. Things like that. Like,
Yeah,
that's some hard stuff, you know?
yeah.
Yeah.
It is amazing to look back at history and what people have endured and overcome. And, it makes me feel like how lazy I am and how spoiled,
Yeah,
you know?
right. It's a reminder of how I always say blessed, and I'm not necessarily super religious. I did grow
Yeah,
up Catholic, but for me, blessed I mean, it's just
yeah,
this really open way of saying like lucky, right? And I don't like using the word
yeah,
lucky. I like saying
yeah,
blessed, and
totally.
um,
Yeah,
and we are. I listen to the
yeah,
stories that, Barbara is of a different generation, and
yeah,
the stories that she even shares of being a woman during the
yeah.
time where it's just like sexual harassment, or
Yeah.
so forth. And during like the Reagan time and the Nixon times, and being here, and even my mother-in-law, who is 92 and was a mother of
Yeah,
11, like she was, a stay-at-home mom. And I just, those times are so
yeah,
different, right?
yeah,
Yeah, so those are the things I think
yeah,
about. Yeah.
yeah. Cool. All right. Well, let's. What would you say then for you? What is your personal life mission? Would you say? Have you kind of thought about
Oh,
that, or what's the one you're working off of? It doesn't have to be refined, but
yeah.
what do you think is driving you in that way?
Yeah, before COVID, I was very anxious, and I was about, like, I had to be doing something by a certain amount of time, or how am
Hmm.
I going to be like 5 years from now? Where am I going to be
Hmm.
at? And um, during COVID, I really started to take it one day at a time.
Hmm.
And that can sound risky to some people, um but in it, I am happy with where I am at right now.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
like my job. I like the amount of time I can give to my job. I am confident in and secure in my abilities, and know when I can't do something, I now say it. um
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
um I've always been interested in living abroad. That would be something that I would like to do at some point,
Hmm.
um,
Yeah. Yeah.
for a little while, and working in the arts and cultural field, whatever that
Mm-hmm.
looks like. And my okay, so my dream would if I had a dream job that can happen, it would be to work with the cultural cities European cultural cities
Hmm.
program, because I think that's really,
Hmm.
really interesting. I don't think that would ever happen for me, but you never
Hmm.
know. um
Yeah.
and so I can't really answer that as like a, this is what I want to do by this time, because I'm
Yeah. Sure.
trying not to look at it in that way. Because
Mm-hmm.
I will, this is a term that I don't know if I created it, or I don't remember if I heard it from somebody. I will future trip.
Hmm.
Does that,
Future trip.
yeah, like trip out on too much on the future and get
Yeah.
anxious.
Yeah. Yeah.
So living in the
Yeah. Yeah.
moment, right? And
Yeah.
and if I'm doing
Yeah.
good today, that will set me up for tomorrow, and so forth and so forth.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, it is that weird kind of thing of like, recognizing the blessings or and the enjoying the moment of today
Hmm.
while you're still, working and, giving it your best, and then how things unfold that you can't even see. But if you try to map it out too much, well, I don't know. It's kind of, you do have to have a plan though. Yeah. I don't
Yeah.
know.
You know, it's
Things do
it's
unfold,
it's kind
right?
of,
And change. Yeah.
it's kind of like, I know we're not going to have kids. Like, that's definitely part of the plan, right? So
Mm-hmm.
so there's one thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
um
Yeah. There's a plan.
we
Yeah.
we own a home, which is,
Yeah.
we're very lucky.
Yeah.
That's not very common here in San Jose. It's hard. um
Yeah.
and Brendan, I'm very open about this, our age difference. He's 15 years older than I am. And
Yeah.
so it, taking into consideration my partner. I'm
Yeah.
kind of traditional when it comes to that. I'm not. I'm very. I stay very aware of codependency because I really don't
Hmm.
want to get to that point
Yeah.
in life. It, um, but at the same time, I try to pay attention to what are your goals, what are my goals. My goals
Yeah.
are I want to have a good job, I want to be healthy, so I want to continue running. One of my
Running.
goals
Yeah.
is to run a marathon before I'm 40.
Awesome.
So there's one,
Cool.
before I'm 40, run a
Yeah.
marathon. Um,
Yeah.
and I want us to be able to travel, right? And so
Yeah.
those are the life goals. Work
Mm-hmm.
wise, if I can continue working in the arts for the next
Mm-hmm.
20 years in any capacity and still be able to live and pay for food and
Yeah.
movement in my home, that is that's what I would be. That's at the end of the
Yeah.
tunnel for me. That's the bright shining star that I
Yeah.
look forward towards.
That's cool.
Thank
That's
you.
cool. Awesome. Alrighty. Well, we should. I want to talk about running real quick. So you want to do a marathon by the time that you're 40? How long is that? How much training?
Yeah.
How many miles you got to do each week?
So I've done a half marathon. And last March was my first half marathon. Um,
Cool.
and I did that in Santa Cruz, and it was amazing. I was some uphill, but that's okay. And I, uh, and and I didn't get upset myself if I had to stop. The
Sure.
competitive person in me would usually,
Hmm.
um, and I didn't, so I felt good about that. So um a marathon is 26.2 miles, right? And
Yeah. Yeah.
um I turned 40 July 1st, 20, what is this? This is 2020, 2022. I turned 38
22.
this year, so 24, 20, yeah,
Okay.
2024.
A couple years out.
2 years
Mm-hmm.
out. I have time. I
Okay.
am I my first marathon, I want it to be the New York Marathon.
Okay.
Um
Awesome.
and I don't want to. Most marathons you have to do a marathon locally, and get a certain time to get into the major marathon like New York. So I
Oh,
don't want
really?
to do it that way because I know I'm not fast. I'm all about like going long, staying
Mm-hmm.
consistent instead of trying to be a fast runner. That's not where I'm at. I would like to do it as a fundraiser.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and I really think that that right there would be helping community as well as myself, mentally and physically. So
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
that, and so you might see me push out that in a couple of years. Hey, I'm finally going to do it. So would you like to
Yeah.
support?
I look forward to that.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah. So
How
there's
many?
heck.
Yeah. That's yeah. How many miles do you like run in a week? What's your kind
Yeah,
of like regimen?
so
I'm kind
I
of curious.
actually just ran a 10K race in Berkeley 2 weeks ago.
Cool.
And that was really, that's 6.1, I believe. I always forget on that one. Just over 6 miles.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like my sweet spot. I love to run I like running 6 miles, 4 to 6 miles. Anything below 4 miles is like on a day, just I don't
Hmm.
really start feeling into it until after the second mile. Then I start feeling a groove.
Hmm. Hmm.
So on a weekly, probably I'm not a high mileage person right now. I'm probably about 10 to 20 miles a week,
Yeah.
depending. But
That's cool.
I also started doing one-on-one personal training with weights. So
Oh,
that
cool.
happens twice a week. So if I'm not running, I'm doing um, training. So
Yeah. That's cool. That's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah. Thank you. I love it. I'm a part
Yeah.
of an all women's run team called Arate. They're based out of Santa Cruz, and they've been just fantastic running with them and diverse. I'm going actually to a public an art exhibition at this running store in Oakland tonight called Renegade, and actually one of the
Oh, cool.
owners grew up in East San Jose and used to work at
Oh, how
Makla
fun.
at one point. So
No way. That's
yeah,
awesome.
so full circle, the my
Yeah.
two worlds coming together, and I like to support them. We don't really have a local running community driven shop here in San Jose or the
Yeah.
South Bay, so I do
Yeah.
unfortunately have to find that sense of community in Oakland.
Yeah. That's cool, though. That's cool. Awesome. Well, congratulations on running
Thank
and
you.
on the Womanhood project and what you guys
Thanks.
are doing at Livermore and the BART system, everything that you're
Oh my
doing.
gosh,
And
yeah.
yeah, thank you for taking time and, kind of sharing a little about your life. I appreciate it. And I always appreciate talking to you because you always, I was even thinking about it, is like, why do I always feel so good when I talk to a man? I mean, it's good. You just have this, and some of it is just your contagious. You always seem to have that laugh, and I just really appreciate. I just really appreciate talking to you and what you do in the community. So
Thanks,
thanks for taking
Daniel. You
time.
know what?
Yeah,
Same. There's some people you just love running into because they make you feel good inside. You're definitely one of them. So I appreciate,
thanks.
I respect and I admire the work that you do. And when you asked me to,
Thanks.
you'd like to have a conversation with me, I just, I was
Uh,
like, wow, how do I can't say no to that. Like, this is going to be great.
yeah, it was cool. Yeah, well, I do, and I enjoy when I see you at events. You and Brendan and we, and Sarah, and we're there and we're able to talk. I always love doing that. So
Yeah.
hopefully we'll see you out somewhere sometime when I get out.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
Well,
cool. Alrighty, thank you,
thank
and
you.
we'll talk to you later. Thanks.
Absolutely. See ya.
Blue sky sun's out the same as yesterday. I'm sick of living every day the same. Skateboard riding, cruising round town. We know the places where you're never.
To find out more about Amanda, follow her on Instagram and Initium Novum, and find out about Art Builds Community at artbuildscommunity.com. Thank you for listening to the Content Magazine podcast. Follow us on social media at Content Mag. Visit our website to become a member and help us to continue to tell the stories of the local creatives. This episode's music is 408 by Jack Pavlina. Follow him on Spotify and also on his Instagram at Jack Pavlina Music.